Welcome, everybody, to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the flight deck, and that, of course, means some smart talk radio is in your future, and boy, this segment certainly no exception. We have had famous people on this show. We've had not famous people on this show, but Dawn Wells is one I've been looking forward to for a long time. She is a talented actress. You know her, of course, in her role as Mary Ann Summers on the CBS sitcom Gilligan's Island in the 60s. Brief background about her. She's born in Reno, Nevada, attended school, part of her schooling anyway, in the Midwest over in Columbia, Missouri. She's also a member of the Alpha Chi Omega sorority, which I know she's most proud of that. She has had a tremendous acting career early on in the Roaring 20s, 77 Sunset Strip, Maverick, Bonanza, amongst others. She has stayed extremely busy, not only in her role as an actress, but also one that has been extremely involved with her time and resources in community action work, and we'll talk about that as well. Dawn, my gosh, how are you, my friend?
I am just wonderful. Thank you. It's been a wonderful year, and my spirits are good. How's your life? Pretty good?
You know what? Other than the fact that in the Middle West right now it's a little bit chilly here, we're really doing okay. So,
good. You guys would have had the storms, though. You're not as bad as the East, are you, or are you?
No. We have four very distinct seasons. Unfortunately, spring and fall last about a week here, and we sort of go to some extremes. But anyway, well, let's talk about you and what I'd really like to explore again. Early on, your entree into show business, my understanding was, again, you were Miss Nevada, and from there. Take us from there and your first real acting job. Get Dawn Wells into the acting career.
Let me just back up just a little bit. I was pre-med major, and I went to Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri. And because my knees dislocated, I couldn't take any PE. After canoeing and archery, there wasn't anything I could do. So I took a theater course. So I always say that Mary Ann was born in Columbia, Missouri. Okay. She's really from Winfield, Kansas, but she really was born. I became an actress because of that. Miss Nevada, I also kind of poo-poo because I'm short and I never had any intention of running in a beauty contest. But because I was a theater major, I thought, you'll have to do a scene in front of all these people, so let me see if I can do it, having no idea at all that I would win it.
Wow.
And I approached it very analytically. Stevens was 2 years. I loved medicine. I was pre-med, so I went to University of Washington in Seattle, which had a fabulous theater department, a fabulous pre-med. Medicine. So when I graduated from from Washington, I gave myself a year. I analyzed where I would go because you could only earn a living in two places at that point, New York and Los Angeles. So I analyzed where I was going to go. Most of the stuff in New York was musical comedy. I don't sing. So I analyzed going into Los Angeles. So I went into Los Angeles after the first couple of interviews. When they said you were Miss Nevada, I stopped saying that because a lot of beauty pageant people come and want to be in the movies. That's not what I was for, so I stopped it. But I went to work right away. And I auditioned for, I think the first thing I auditioned for was The New Interns, a movie that was shot on a lot with Barbara Eden and Greg Morris and Telly Savalas and Stephanie Powers and kind of the young people working then, you know. And I got to know Barbara pretty well, and it was directed by John Rich. And then I did, I don't remember what my first show was. Maybe it was 77 Sunset Strip at Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers put me under option to contract, which means they did 9 shows in a row. They didn't pick up the contract. They had contract players then, and some people like that. But I had 9 shows under my belt because it wasn't like today. Today you can look at digital and see what somebody did and how was the audition. Then you did a show and it didn't air for 6 to 10 weeks. So the first time I saw myself on camera, I was blinking my eyes, and I didn't know any of that because I'd never seen myself do film.
Right.
So it was kind of a little rough beginning, but I went to work right away and got my equity card immediately with Mercedes McCambridge and did a play. I was lucky, and I think I ran a boot camp for a long time for film actors, and I think everybody that arrives in Hollywood is talented unless you're just there because you're pretty. But all actors usually have some preparation. So you arrive, you're probably the best kid in your high school or your college or whatever. Then what happens to you is they have to type you. You can't be all things to all people.
Right.
You can on stage. You can kind of fool somebody from 40 feet away, but you can't fool the camera. I'm never going to play a tall Swede. No matter how good I am, I'm never going to look that way. Yeah. So I was a perfect type. I was well-trained, I had a good education, and I was a perfect type. And I think that's what kicked me into my first couple roles.
When you took those first roles and you landed in Hollywood and you went through all that, was there ever a time, did Don Wells ever say, you know what, I don't like this, I really want to go be a doctor? Or was it a moment, sort of one of those epiphanies where, wow, this is exactly what I want to do?
I don't think I had either thought. I think I gave myself a goal, and I think you're too busy worrying about how to get into the business, what acting class to take, what agent to take, who does your headshots every 6 months. Then you get into acting classes for voiceover and improv and workshops, and then you start networking. So you're looking for the job. You're waiting to get the first job, and the first 2 or 3 jobs you're pretty green. I mean, I had Louis Nye, who played the horse race tout in 70 Cents Up Strip, teach me how to match. I don't know if you know what that means, but if I'm doing a scene where you see 5 or 6 of us sitting at a table, and we're in a restaurant, and you see the whole first floor of the restaurant, and I take a drink during a certain line of somebody's or my own, when they come in to do a close-up, you've got to take the same drink at the same time.
Right.
Because they have to cut it and match it. Well, I didn't know anything about that. You could cost them a lot of money if you didn't know those things. So I didn't have any film training. So I was studying and working at how I went to rushes every day. I was one of the few they allowed in because I wanted to see what photographed best, etc. So I never at one point said, I wish I'd have gone into medicine. One of the things that really helped me was doing the telethon because I loved it. I watched facial cranial surgery. I was in neonatal unit forever. I mean, I really loved it. So I had my fix of medicine, so to speak, which was really best of both worlds. I think now that I've kind of done what I do and I love what I do, I might think about genetic stuff. I might think about altering these genes and all this stuff that's going on right now. Medicine may be a little more intriguing if I were starting again. I don't know. I love what I do, and I haven't, so it's not that. But my brain has 2 things. I don't really consider myself an artist. I have an analytical mind. I was writing, I'm working on my book, and I was writing about, what is my point of view? I'm a debater. I have a friend who says to me, but every time I tell you something, you don't say, oh, yeah, that's great. You always give me the negative. And I said, I do because I want you to convince me you think you're right. I'm a debater. I'm going to tell you what's bad about it, and you tell me, no, and convince me. That's because as a debater, you get your assignment that you're pro-abortion, let's say, and then the day of the debate, they say, no, now you're against abortion.
Right.
You have to prepare both sides of the argument, and I do that, and I really think that's an asset to living. Look at both sides all the time.
And I would think it would serve you extremely well in the world of acting, being able to climb into a variety of positions and characters. Yeah,
that's very perceptive, because you have to then define the whole. We're not all one thing.
Well, you just joined us. You're missing a good one here. Yours truly, Warner Lewis, from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio, and this segment, we're talking to Dawn Wells. You know her first from her work on Gilligan's Island, which we will talk about in a minute, but she also has an exceptional career. She started off, went to Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri, and went to Washington University after that, goes to Hollywood and becomes extremely successful there, and also is involved, again, in a lot of community involvement work. Dawn, I sense in you, and I would sense in anyone in that business, tremendous drive, tremendous passion, and in your case, tremendous focus. And I'm curious as to look back on your life, where did your inherent drive come, whether it was for acting or anything you were doing, and where did that focus come from?
That's interesting. It's interesting you use the word drive. A lot of people have a real passion and ambition. I have to. I think it's a work ethic.
Yep.
I think if I had gone 2 years and never gotten a part, I'd have gone back to medicine for sure. I now look at myself and I think if I had to do it all over again, I'd like to be Christina Amanpour. Yep. I'd like to speak all these languages and talk to people all over the world because there's so much to learn. So the passion of having to be an actress wasn't 150%. But I think my parents were divorced when I was 4, but I had 2 families that loved me. My mother and father never said a bad word about each other ever. And my mother had a really good work ethic. I was disciplined. I don't mean spanked. I mean, I was disciplined. Never entered my mind not to try to get good grades and go to study.
Right.
Never entered my mind I wasn't going to college. Nobody sat down and talked to me. And I don't know. And kind of doing this book, I'm going back thinking, well, why? Why did I have this ambition? And they say you learn your ambition from your father and your nurturing from your mother. My father would not allow her to go to college, so she went to business school. So she was a bookkeeper.
Right.
But she was hard at that, and she was good at that. She wasn't. She was a working woman. She had to work. My father was a dreamer, but very successful. So I'm kind of a dreamer. My father would go through a city and say, they need a laundromat on this corner, that kind of thing. And everything he kind of touched worked.
Yeah.
But he was so kind and loving and giving to people. That was part of the charisma. It wasn't education. So I think it was just by example. I'm talking about Marianne and why do we like her so much. And I think there's a respect that you feel for Marianne. And I think I grew up with, I respected my mother. And we argued. Oh, boy, we argued. Only child, woman in the house.
Uh-huh.
My mother watched me like a hawk. I have two very funny stories if you have a minute.
You bet.
When I graduated from Stevens, I went to the University of Washington. My college sweetheart was an all-American quarterback who lived in Los Angeles at the University of Washington. And my senior year, he wanted to drive his car back to campus, pick me up in Reno, and drive me back to Seattle. Well, my mother didn't think I should be in a car for 12 hours with the boy.
Right.
However, she said I could do it. I was a senior in college, for heaven's sakes. I'd gone to Stevens for 2 years away from home, where it was like living in jail practically. We were so protected when I went there. And so I went. And I was sound asleep, my head against the window, someplace in Oregon. It's about a 12-hour drive. Highway Patrol pulls us over. And I wake up, I said, Al, were we speeding? He said, no, I don't think so. And he rolled down the window, and the highway patrolman said, is there a Dawn Wells in the car? Yes, I'm Dawn Wells. Call your mother. So, my mother knew where I was every single minute. And I don't think that's a bad thing. You know? We have cell phones, and mothers can get in touch with you every minute. But I think I came from good stock. Yeah,
you did, and it sounds like, and you came from right and wrong, and you came from that you're responsible for your own destiny.
Yeah.
Or so it sounds like, anyway.
For sure.
Well, we have to talk about Gilligan's Island. Here's what's interesting. I guess this is a personal observation. You were known as Marianne Summers on the show. I have a question for you. Was your last name ever used in the script on that show? Am I dumb that I didn't know your last name was Summers?
I don't think it ever was, and I don't think the professor's ever was either.
I know.
Jonas Grumby, the skipper, was only said once on a radio broadcast that we were supposedly listening to. No, you're right. I don't know how we ever knew what her name was.
This is going to be really bad. God, did they ever use Gilligan's last name?
Oh, because there's a debate about that. I really do believe he just had one name. I think Sherwood did that on purpose. Sherwood did a lot of stuff. He knew comedy very well. He put them in the same clothes. You saw Charlie Chaplin in the stage, Laurel and Hardy in the same clothes. He put them in the same clothes so you recognize immediately.
Right.
And I think he just was Gilligan. They keep trying to say there was a Willie Gilligan, and I think he might have considered it, but he was always just Gilligan.
Well, Gilligan's Island runs from 64 to 67, and when I say that, I think, my gosh, it seemed like it ran for 10 years. But
the longest-running show in the history of television. We've never been off the air since 1964, and we're in 30 languages all over the world.
That I certainly believe. You made a really interesting comment I read one time about that the world, and you referenced it here earlier a little bit, that the world really, there are thousands and millions maybe of gingers, but that the Marianne character, the one with some sense of substance, with some sense of just being genuinely a good person, with good intentions, we lack that, particularly these days. Do you still agree with that statement?
I do, and I think it's getting harder and harder if you were a mother of a 14-year-old daughter. I mean, it's now all and I'm not berating Ginger, but it's all now famous for nothing.
Yeah.
So for no reason, and keeping up with the Kardashians. You know what? I have to have this purse, and the skirt's got to be this length, and dieting so I weigh 2 pounds, and all of this. It's so important to belong because it's not just a little community you belong to anymore. Not just the kids around the block. You're on camera every second. Everybody's taking pictures of you, I mean, it's gotten so surface. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm writing this book.
Well,
I think Marianne has influenced a lot of generations here. And I think good girls finish first. I really do, and I think it's real hard. And I'm not talking morality per se. Manners, grooming, language. I mean, and what we see every single day. I mean, you see erectile dysfunction for a sixth grader in a television show. I mean, nothing is sacred anymore. So our judgment has to be stronger. We're exposed to many things, and I'm fascinated with the Hasidic Jews. I'm fascinated with the Mormons. I'm fascinated with the Amish. How do you keep your children in tow today? How do you all do that? That is really tough.
Yeah, there's no question that fame is incredibly fleeting and many times not deserved, and so without substance, there's not going to be much that sustains very long, for sure.
No, and what's going to happen 40 years from now? Where are those values?
When you were doing the Marianne character, this is sort of ridiculous to ask you, but did you have to stretch it all for the character? And when you were doing it, as silly and sophomoric as times as it may have seemed, you must have loved most of it most of the time.
Oh, we loved doing it, and it was very interesting. It's hard to do comedy without an audience. And Gilligan just became the character. He was just a genius. And really and truly, all the other characters are described. There's a professor, there's a wealthy man, a wealthy woman, there's a captain, there's a mate, there's a professor, there's a movie star, there's a girl from Kansas. What that girl is, I think I helped create. I think Marianne, my version of Marianne, my approach to her, she was smart. She was independent. She was genuine. She was a companion. She was strong. She wasn't, and I'm not putting actresses down, but she wasn't the Beverly Hillbillies. She wasn't the Petticoat Junction. She wasn't that kind of an ingenue. She was really kind of a compass, a moral compass. I hate to keep using that word, but she really was. Yeah, and I think part of it, I don't think you can do a series year after year after year that you don't bring yourself to it some. But I think once the series gets in sync, which, I'm now watching the black and whites on the Me Channel. It's interesting because I forgot how funny it was. I mean, the slapstick that Jim Backus and Alan do with their hands and the Lauren Hardy bit and everything was very funny. But I realized how, as it grows, the writers wrote more for me. I got the most fan mail, but I don't mean they wrote for me to be the star. I think they needed the nucleus of this little island to have a center a little bit, and I think it was me. I mean Marianne. I don't mean Dawn, but a lot of Dawn was there. Everybody was sort of their little niche, and I think Marianne was sort of the spoke of the wheel.
Wasn't Marianne also the one that basically, in essence, so to speak, Middle America, so to speak, would identify with immediately?
I think so.
Weren't you?
I think so.
You call it moral compass, which I agree. You were the grounded character, were you not?
I think so. Yes. And Sherwood was smart enough to put me in shorts, so there was a little sex appeal there.
Right.
I mean, been in the gingham dress the whole time. That was just, and we were the first family out of the living room.
Yeah.
We weren't a husband and wife and kids.
This also, I know you've been asked this many times, but let's explore this one. Wildly successful. If you weren't before, you were certainly recognized everywhere you went after that show. Had its strong run and continues to. Is there any regret? And by that simply mean, was Marianne such a typecast that it hindered you, or was it something that you viewed as completely as a wonderful springboard?
Well, I think it was a wonderful experience, and I could never have done anything that I would have been more well known for, with such love around the world. I'm greeted with love everywhere. On the acting side of it, it's been tough because I still have to knock on New York's door. Years ago, I wanted to read for Vagina Monologues, and they just laughed. Marianne doing Vagina Monologues. I said, I can act, And it's tough because New Yorkers they're snobs as far as their theater is concerned. They should be. They're the best there is. But don't put down Gilligan's Island. You have some talented people on that show. the plot was silly, but so was vaudeville.
Right.
So were some of the things. So was the Munsters on Broadway.
Right.
So I had a difficult time getting past the Marianne character. Now that I'm older, it's a different ballgame. I mean, I just came from Lion in Winter. I'm going in to play Weezer and Steel Magnolias, and I've continued. I went right back to the theater. After Gilligan's Island, I didn't want to be cast as a little farm girl for the next 2 or 3 years.
Right.
So I went back to stage, and the first thing I did was The Owl and the Pussycat. I played a cooker. Then I did Man in the Moon Marigold. Then I did Private Lives. So I went back and honed my craft, so to speak, as I transitioned from this ingenue to semi-leading lady.
Yeah.
And I think it's I see, as I keep saying to students that I've worked with, it's a career. It's show business. It's a business. You can't just get stuck in one little niche and think that's going to be it forever. It changes. It grows. I mean, now you can YouTube. Everybody's making a movie, then we're watching the 20 seconds later.
Right.
5 years ago, you couldn't get a script looked at.
Right.
So the world is moving very quickly, and I think it's moving for people with talent. I'm just fascinated with what the kids are doing today.
Yeah. There's no question the access is certainly there for sure. Again, if you just joined us, Lewis at Large, yours truly, Warner Lewis, from the flight deck, talking to Dawn Wells, a talented actress. You know her as Marianne on Gilligan's Island, but has done a host of other work. Quickly, is there such a thing? Do you have a preference, stage versus being in front of the camera, or does it matter to you?
Well, I think it really doesn't matter to me, but I have never had a real chance on film to do a real gut-wrenching role. I would love to do that. And I've never done a sitcom with an audience on television either. I think when I say I prefer stage, I don't really prefer it. The roles have been better, and the roles will probably always be better for me. I love an audience reaction. I mean, I love to feel the audience when you're losing them, when you've got them in the palm of your hand. And I love the rehearsal period. I would rather rehearse and play for 2 weeks and then go on to another play. I love it. I love with the experimentation and the growth between the actors and all of that. So the process, I think I like more on stage. But I love the intimacy of film. I mean, you can be subtle. It can be behind your eyes, and the audience can see it. I love that. So I have no desire to direct film. I like directing theater. I don't think that's what I want to do, but...
Yeah. What about, I want to explore you have been so involved in the various communities and the various passions that you have, everything from the Wishing Wells collection, which is making clothing for people with limited mobility. I think that's extremely interesting. You've also do work for the Denver Foundation. Why the passion, and what in particular drives you here?
I wasn't raised with my parents. My father and stepmother adopted 2 children when I was 15. So I never lived in a home or raised. They were like my little aunts. I was like their aunt and uncle or something. I played dolls with them. It wasn't like I was raising a child. So I have no children. Working with that children's hospital, I became very close to a young cystic fibrosis young woman who we finally lost to a heart and lung transplant. I got very involved with the babies in the neonatal, the ones that are just barely making it, and they're there for 6 months, and yet the miracles happen. I think there is such a feeling of satisfaction when you give back something, whether it's to the elderly, to the stray dog you've picked up, to children, to something. It gives you something inside. So I think the more you do, the more you feel. I'm very fortunate to run a foundation of my cousins who's passed away in Reno, Nevada, and we've just opened a children's museum, a discovery museum, and watching all the kids learning and doing things, it fulfills me. It really fulfills me, and I think everybody can need some help somewhere, sometime, and if you haven't tried it, see what it feels like. Help somebody some way. It really does make a difference.
Yeah, indeed it does. Hey, listen, we're starting to run out of time here a little bit. I do want to touch on you're working on many things. Tell us a little bit about, and you're also dabbling in the world of being an author.
Yes, I'm writing a book. It'll be out in the fall. Since it's Gilligan's 50th anniversary, I have a lot to say, and it isn't an autobiography about my life, but it's thoughts about Marianne, because all over the world now I'm greeted with love. Every man I meet has been in love with a Marianne, or married a Marianne, or my wife's a Marianne, and the women were close to me because I'd have been your best friend. And I see it. I see it with the audience. year after year after year. So I think that I have something to say. I'm excited about that. And I want to produce. I really like it. I've got a couple of projects kind of in the works that I really don't want to talk about, but I really like that. I wish I had a production contract when the series went off the air. I'd like to create something like that. And then I'm doing theater, so I'm Gilligan's Island movie's coming out now. You know that Warner Brothers has announced that they are doing it.
Yeah.
And it's coming out in 2015, so we're talking an awful lot about your fantasy cast, and I'd love to do a cameo in it, and they've talked to me about it, so that might be kind of fun. I just hope they treat it right. And you don't know, maybe the audience is different today, so that's kind of fun. I don't have much time on my hands.
Well,
as a matter of fact, I'll tell you really quickly, on the 21st of January, I'm going into Vancouver for a boat show because the SS Minnow has been restored.
Oh, gosh. You're kidding.
Yes, and it's beautifully done, and they take it out for charitable, raising money for kids. Isn't that fabulous?
What an absolutely perfect idea. Hey, okay, I guess my last question, and again, we're going to tell everybody right now that we're going to set up another interview with Dawn in the fall, about the time the book is released. So we'll talk again in a few months, but between now and then, so when in the world are you ever going to have an opportunity to go back to med school then? You sound pretty busy.
I'm probably not going to make it this round. Second life, maybe.
Okay.
And, I'm getting into your technical world. Can I just say that I'd like you to like me on Facebook? It's Facebook/The Real Marianne, because that tells me where I'm going to be. I mean, it might be in somebody's area where I'm going to be and say hi to you. I mean, like if you're around the boat show or
absolutely.
If you want to come steal magnolias and that kind of stuff.
Okay, so we have Facebook. Is there a is there a Marianne or Dawn Wells website? Let's talk about that too.
DawnWells.com.
Just like it sounds.
DawnWells.com, and Facebook is The Real Marianne.
Okay, well, none better. Dawn Wells, you know her as Marianne, but you have heard over the last several minutes, there's lots of substance there and some tremendous energy and passion. Thank you so much for spending time with us, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again, probably, I guess, towards the fall, I would guess, right?
Yeah, and I want to say what a great interviewer you are. Sometimes it's just such a inane conversation, and you really have asked some wonderful questions that have some depth, and I really appreciate that, Warren. That's really nice.
Hey, I appreciate that, too, and we will talk soon. In the meantime, have a wonderful time doing what you do, and thank you for the public service work that you do as well.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You bet. We'll be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.